Hello, everybody. My name's Eric, and I'm going to be giving you guys a sneak peek at a fantastic study on early skin-to-skin contact and breastfeeding exclusivity. Something that can affect a lot of people and may affect some of you guys one day. Oh, I keep forgetting this. Okay, so the big problem with this topic is that for those of you that have birthed a child, you can relate to this. Common hospital-based practices, they're not very helpful in encouraging skin-to-skin contact. Um, and without this skin-to-skin contact, you're going to have it's going to be less likely for breastfeeding to be successful. Um, Physiologically, when you do have early skin-to-skin contact, that helps regulates the baby's temperature. It helps the baby with respirations. You encourage that mother-infant bonding period. And without that, you lose all of that when you don't have early skin-to-skin contact. Um, and I'll go into those birthing practices shortly. So the main question is early skin-to-skin contact between the mother and the infant, is that going to correlate with more breastfeeding exclusivity during a maternal hospital stay? So as far as the lit review goes, a thing that I found interesting was that Healthy People, this article was from 2010, and Healthy People 2010, actually one of the goals was to encourage, they want 75% of mothers to be breastfeeding. So if this wasn't an important topic, then the government wouldn't have felt the need to go out of their way to include this into their Healthy People 2010 thing. Like it says up there, there's more success in the early postpartum period with breastfeeding if there's early skin to skin, and it also eases the infant's transition into life. When an infant's born, a hormone from the adrenal glands called catecholamine gets released. This helps the infant stay alert. It keeps them going. It helps them breathe and whatnot. But after a while, that becomes maladaptive. And by having that early skin-to-skin contact with the mother, it actually helps calm the infant down. The infant reacts to the mother's touch, the mother's odor, things like that. And yeah, hospital policies. There's a lot of things that happen after an infant's born. They're going to get taken away for a physical exam. They're going to get Apgard. They're going to get suctioned. They're going to get swaddled. They get the erythromycin ophthalmic ointment put on, and they also get the vitamin K injection to help with their clotting because they don't have that because they're just born. So all of those things play a role in taking the infant away from the mother right after the infant is born. So. And the other big thing is there's really been no I guess, literature on certain other things like socio-demographic factors and intrapartum behavior. Not behaviors, but if they're going to get a C-section, if they're going to get analgesia, is any of that going to correlate with how successful breastfeeding can be? So that's another thing that the study looked at. And so this is the name of the study: Effects of Early Skin-to-Skin Mother-Infant Contact during the first 3 hours following birth on exclusive breastfeeding during the maternity hospital stay. A lot of authors here. You get a good mix. You get RNs, you have PhDs, you have MDs as well, birthing specialists. So it's a good reliable source of people. And again, as I stated before, there's all those issues with common birthing practices in the hospital, taking the infant away from the mother. I stated before, there is no literature that goes into all those other factors that could possibly play a role. So that's another thing this study looked at. So I guess the purpose was to determine whether or not extended early skin-to-skin contact would actually correlate to exclusive breastfeeding, which is, again, one of the goals of Healthy People 2010. So basically, the researchers in this study hypothesized that, indeed, longer periods of early skin-to-skin mother-infant contact would lead to an increase in exclusive breastfeeding during the mother's maternity hospital stay. So here's the design. The design of the study, it's a quasi-experimental prospective cohort study. Quasi-experimental meaning that the study, it's going to follow common literature, common theories. You're basically going to be validating the theories. There's no randomized control groups. It's prospective because it means it's in the present. It's happening as the mothers are giving birth. It's not retrospective or looking back. Also, there was no framework identified by the researchers as to what they based the study off of. If you had to guess, it would be some sort of physiological framework that had been used in the past, but they didn't identify anything. And as far as our variables go, our independent variable, that's the early skin-to-skin contact. How long, you're going to modify it by like how long the early skin-to-skin contact is, and it's going to have an effect on your dependent variable of likeliness to breastfeed exclusively. So as we know, basic research 101, the independent variable, how is it going to affect the dependent variable? So we'll take a look at that in a minute. Our sample involved a cohort, meaning just a single group of 21,842 dyads of mother infants. A lot of attrition in this study. Over 1,000 mother-infant dyads were eliminated because there was missing data. So whoever took this data didn't really seem to care much about it. It was used using convenience samplings, meaning that anyone that showed up that met the inclusion criteria was able to participate. They didn't just pick from a sample. There were 19 hospitals that were involved in this, and as long as a mother showed up at one of those hospitals and gave birth to a healthy singleton infant with a gestational age of 37 to 40 weeks between June 2005 and July 2006, they were allowed to participate. So as long as anyone that showed up to one of those hospitals met that criteria, they were part of the study. Oh, also, and they couldn't be separated, the mother and infant, for more than an hour. Okay, so onto the statistics section. Basically, what the stats show was that mothers who did exclusively breastfeed, who experienced early skin-to-skin contact, were more likely to exclusively breastfeed. The study method was a univariate logistic regressional analysis. And a logistical regression, basically, it measures the relationship between the dependent variable and like one or more independent variables. It estimates probability. So we're basically looking at the chance of what's going to happen. And the main statistic used, instead of a correlation coefficient, we used an odds ratio, which basically would measure whether the outcome would occur, given a particular exposure, versus the odds of it occurring without that exposure. And instead of a probability, they use a 95% confidence interval, which is just basically going to measure the precision of the odds ratio. And 95% is the gold standard of using a confidence interval. So as you can see, the higher your odds ratio, the better. And as you can see, the longer it went, 1 to 15 minutes, your odds ratio, 1.3676. And the further down you went in time, the more likely that outcome would occur without the exposure of the early skin-to-skin. So the longer you had early skin-to-skin contact, the better off, the more likely you were to exclusively breastfeed. As great as that data is, there are limitations. They need longer follow-up studies to be done. Basically, it wasn't a randomized control trial, so there could be outliers in the data. There could be a number of extraneous variables that they couldn't measure. The big thing with me was that they didn't touch base on oxytocin at all, and oxytocin is a very important part of the birth process. It's a hormone released by the pituitary gland that helps with the mother in milk ejection, with uterine contractions. It also plays the role in the mother-infant bonding and attachment, and there was no mention of that at all in the study, and I felt that would have been useful data to use in the study. And it's not very globally generalized. They even bragged in the study how this was a great sample of Southern California. Well, how is that going to help? There's cultural differences all over the world that might not be helpful for a study somewhere in Europe or something like that. So overall, implications of this study: early skin-to-skin contact is clinically effective in helping with the birthing process. There should be increased skin-to-skin bonding time, and actually, the hospital staff was interviewed, and actually none of the staff interviewed reported that this was a burden on them in their jobs at all. So overall, they did support the hypothesis. The data did support it. There's obvious importance to this period. They need to globally generalize it. Southern California is great, but that's not everywhere, and they need to implement this as early as possible in the process. So. Hope you guys found my presentation interesting. It was an interesting topic, fun to do, and I hope you guys learned something. So, thank you.